I must say, after a long journey inside the dungeon, I am exhausted and in need of some sort of sustenance. In fact, one could even say,
Warrior needs food badly.
Yes, welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. What I'm doing is actually another one of those subjects that I wanted to cover back when I did my my chainmail, which you've all seen, and my Morning Star. I got a little medieval style helmet here too. What this is with regards to is kind of, I want to do a little food experiment. Something that came up back in the day when I played Dungeons and Dragons quite often. And I thought this might make an interesting video, because what I want to do, I want to tackle iron rations. Now, what are iron rations? I mean, that sounds like a very odd name for something. This is a tricky subject, so I apologize if this video is a little long. In Dungeons and Dragons, when you are about to head off on your excursion, you have two options for what you're going to do. Well, three options, I suppose. What you're going to do to survive out there. You can either forage for food and hunt. That's your first option, providing you have the skill and the traps or bow and arrow, whatever would be needed to down an animal out there. Or you can bring standard rations, which are detailed as being pieces of meat and cheese and fruit, that kind of thing, which is good for about a week, and then it will go bad. Or your third option are these, iron rations. And I remember asking my DM of the time, what the heck are iron rations? I mean, are you eating iron? Why are they called that? And I don't know if he actually knew, but it's something that's always been on the back of my mind. What exactly are iron rations? Why would they be called that? What are they? And a further subject that he used to bring up was this isn't very enjoyable food to eat. So I just thought, okay, this is going to make a very interesting video for showing off. Now, this is actually inspired by a BuzzFeed video I saw about a year ago where they tried out U.S. military rations, the kind of stuff the soldiers carry out in the field. And it reminded me, oh yeah, I wonder about iron rations for Dungeons and Dragons. Nobody seems to have done a video of what they might have been or anything like that. Never mind actually eating them. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to eat some iron ration. Now, what exactly? Well, first of all, why are they called iron rations? Because that to me is the biggest question. Apparently, Gary Gygax, who created Dungeons and Dragons, was very big into tabletop soldier games, moving your infantry and your troops around, Napoleonic era things, little tin soldier type games. And in the First World War, there was a kind of ration called the, the standard ration, which I guess again was the one that would go bad soon. Or the emergency ration, also known as the iron ration. Why is it called that? Because it actually came in an iron tin, like this. So, this is the iron that iron rations is referring to. It would have been a little metal box. Now, I am making this a little more fanciful than historically accurate. What is in here is guaranteed the kind of food you would have had in a pack of iron rations, but it's not, well, when I show you the different kinds of food that are in there, it'll make a bit more sense as to why. Now, in World War I, the iron that was referenced was actually a metal tin that soldiers would rip open and have whatever food was inside. And I honestly think the modern-day sardine pack might actually be what the great descendant of that iron ration may have been. You just you rip open the tin, you eat whatever is inside, that's your iron ration. So when Gary Gygax was writing up the rules and all the supplies and things for Dungeons and Dragons, he applied that 100-year-old, roughly, military approach to things and just labeled the food that lasts for a while will be called iron rations. Now for this, I've actually created an iron tin here, and I've packed it full of what I would think is the kind of stuff those D&D iron rations would be. There'll be a few exceptions to this coming up, but let's get on with it. Oh, and in addition, let me move my Morning Star out of the way, having bashed a few people in the head with that. In addition to the iron rations and my plate, we also need to talk about grog. This would have been some kind of alcoholic drink that would have been used in, well, throughout certainly the pre-modern era. Anybody in Napoleonic times or possibly even Roman soldiers would have been drinking grog. It has been described online as very alcoholic and almost like drinking liquid potato. So what have I chosen for my grog? I've chosen Guinness. And my brother-in-law will be very pleased about that. But honestly, having done my research, it was painful, and having tried quite a few different types of beer, I find that Guinness is probably the closest match to whatever medieval grog would have been. It's thick, it's heavy, it's like a liquid meal in and of itself. So Guinness will be our grog, and we have our iron rations. Now, a couple of other points before we open up our iron rations here. Historically, and in a lot of books, even medieval fantasy books, the food that is being eaten and prepared is actually done by somebody who's got plates, pots and pans, access to water. But I wanted to collect in here the kind of things that my characters in Dungeons & Dragons would have been eating. That is, anything that can be carried in the backpack for ages at a time, also does not require access to water, does not require access to a fire, like a campfire, and also doesn't need pots and pans or anything like that. If you've seen the Lord of the Rings movies, there's some good scenes where Frodo and Sam are traveling across the Middle-earth, and they have potato soups and things that they're collecting and making for themselves. What I wanted to do with this little experiment is to show these are iron rations that you could have carried in your backpack down into the middle of a dragon's dungeon and never would have required a campfire to be built, no running water nearby, nothing like that. This is standalone iron ration, the kind of stuff my characters were always eating. One item that is not in here that my dungeon master was constantly referencing, and I tried to include it, is salted fish. He was always making a reference to salted fish, and I always thought, oh yeah, like sardines, that would be fine. Turns out salted fish, which was a well-known food staple through various periods of history, was actually salt cod, most likely. And that is fish that has been buried in giant amounts of salt so that all the liquid has been drawn out of it, and you end up with a dried fish or possibly one that was frozen. I did get some salt cod for this video, but unfortunately, in doing my research on how do you prepare salted fish, every video and every website that I investigated all mentioned you need to put the fish into water and let it sit, sometimes for like 24 hours before you can actually prepare it in your dish. So salted fish, salt cod, I'm sure that was a genuine item that was used in rations for many, many years, but to be honest, it's not going to make the cut because I don't really want to talk about food that would require soaking for 24 hours. In my Dungeons & Dragons adventures, I was lucky to find a little corner of a dungeon somewhere that I could sit down and just have something to eat. So never mind this leaving it in a bucket overnight type of stuff for salted fish. So alas, that one is not with us today. But what is? Now let's get to this. First of all, let's move our grog out of the way and our plate. Here we have my pack of iron rations. I will open, I'll show you each of these items in turn, but let's just, I've essentially packed up 5 different things here. Now, what are we looking at? Let's start with the most interesting one, to me at least. This is Pemmican. This is actually, depending on certain sources, this is also called Iron Rations. This is essentially bison meat that has been mixed in with tallow, or in other words, kind of melted animal fat, and then let to sit. This is, in some references, in itself called Iron Rations, and because it would often be in a little metal tin and used by a lot of voyagers across North America, say a couple hundred years ago. I'm going to discuss something further about this in a second, but anyway. Pemmican. This is parched wheat. This stuff actually goes back to biblical times. It is referenced multiple times, and I'm very curious what this one's going to taste like. But we'll get to that in a sec. The rest of the items you might actually recognize. We've got some cheese. This is contained in its wax seal still, and it's probably kind of big. I think I would have liked to have bought a smaller version of this for this video, because this is a lot to eat right now. But I think I didn't want to get a little baby bell that was wrapped in plastic. I thought, no, I want to get something that at least looks the right part. So this is a fairly large piece of waxed cheese, but as you can see, it is fully encased, so that's that one. Here we have some crackers or crisp bread to have with our cheese. We got some dried fruit, and I'll leave this as the mystery ingredient. This is my dessert. Although, to be honest, I'm really having some grog right now. All right, there we go. That'll keep us going. So, where do we want to start? Well, let's go with the strangest first. The pemmican. This stuff, now, before I open this, actually, again, I want to highlight, this is not supposed to be historically accurate, because the dried fruit that I've got is mango, and pemmican and mango and chainmail, they never would have been anywhere near each other historically. Pemmican was used, again, about 200 years ago. It's based on something that native people in North America had been making for centuries to keep themselves alive across big stretches of land and also through harsh winters. It doesn't actually have a European connection, but neither does the dried mango. And I was telling my wife when she was asking, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense historically. And I said, well, okay, chainmail, morning stars, pemmican, and mango, they never would have met in history. In Dungeons and Dragons, Iron Rations and chainmail and all of these, they were together all the time. So again, you have to put yourself into a fantasy frame of mind for this video. This is not supposed to be history. This is what would it have been like to eat the food that we were eating in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, let's get on with the pemmican. Clear some space. Got my trusty dagger here. Okay, let's open her up. I've made a video of how we actually made the pemmican, so that'll be coming up in another time. But for now, what's it actually like? Ooh, interesting. It's like a lump of meat pie. That would have been the tallow that had risen to the top that has obviously dried up there. But yes, this is pemmican, made by my own hands, bison meat. Let's try a good chunk of this here. Oh, it's solid. There we go. There you go. It's like a lump of... It doesn't look very nice, but let's try out a chunk of pemmican. You know what? I'm going to cut that little bit off the top there. I don't think I need that much fat. Okay. Let's go for a chunk of pemmican here. Yum, yum. Yeah. Well, it's not very good. It tastes like, good. I'm glad I cut that bit of fat off the top. It's like, wow, that is a tough one to describe. We have another piece here. I mean, it's like eating just a big chunk of meat, which is technically what it is. And it tastes like it, that's for sure. But in my research, this was never a meal, or this was never something you would eat out of pleasure. It was a way to store high protein and high fat food for people who were traveling, and it kept. Apparently, according to various sources, if you knew how to make your pemmican properly, you could take this stuff, and quite often travelers would take an extra pack of it, bury it in the ground, go on their journey, turn around, come back, dig it up out of the ground, and eat it. And experts who know how to make this stuff properly, it could last for decades in the ground. So that's, even though this isn't terribly tasty, it sure as heck does last. Anyway, let's have another bite. Oh man, that is, I wouldn't say it tastes bad. That's not being too kind to the pemmican. That is really hard to describe, man. It tastes of meat and not much else. It's not like beef jerky or anything. It's not spicy or salty. Oh man, that is really, I'm actually at a loss on how to describe pemmican. It's not bad. And again, if you're starving, if you're traveling around, if you're in a dungeon, man, I'm seriously at a loss of words on how to describe that stuff. I might have some final thoughts about that, but let's crack on with the other items here. Yeah, pemmican, interesting. Let's have a little bit of the grog. All right, there, I've cleaned the palate. Whew, boy, oh boy. Let's try parched wheat. What the heck is this stuff? Well, this is wheat kernels that have been essentially just heated up in a pan. This is, again, very old school or old world food, this stuff. It's been mentioned in the Bible. It's, when I first was making this stuff, I thought it was going to be like a, like sugar puff. You know, I thought it was going to puff up really, really large. Because, I mean, sugar puff is just puffed wheat, right? So I thought, okay, this is... But it's actually ended up being more like a green... how does that... It almost looks like couscous in a way, but it's very dry. Anyway, let's take a handful. Oh, hang on. Let's get a bitter handful. Okay. Okay, here is a handful of the parched wheat, and I'm just going to down this right away here. Actually, you know, that's not bad. I'm really surprised, especially compared to the pemmican. That's really tasty. It's almost like, you know, if you get to the bottom of the popcorn bag and you've got just the solid kernels, it's very much like that, but not as hard to chew on. Like it's a lighter version of that. And it is surprisingly tasty. This is good stuff, actually. Parched wheat. Yeah. I don't know how you would have that. You know, that would actually make an interesting cereal. Mix that with some milk or something like that. Because it's surprisingly tasty. All I did was heat it up in a pan. I didn't use any kind of grease or oil or anything. There's no seasoning on that. It's just wheat that's been heated up and it popped. And it's actually really good. I like that. That's an interesting experiment gone well. Parched wheat, I approve. Now let's get another grog in us. I just realized I said let's get another grog in us. So I basically said Guinness. Anyway, never mind, bad joke. A cheese. Now this is getting into a little bit more normal territory. This stuff, when I bought it, was apparently good for 6 months. Now, okay, sure, it's been in a refrigerator, But I think that gives a good indication that cheese, when left in its wax, does last for quite a long time. And so, I can totally see that they would have used this in their travels. Maybe not a giant hockey puck sized piece like that, but yeah. And here is my crisp bread or cracker or biscuit or whatever way you want to describe this stuff. This would have clearly been something a lot of people use. Let's just rip that in half and throw some of the cheese on there. Okay. Have a good chunk of cheese and crackers. Yep, that was good stuff. I mean, you can kind of tell what cheese and crackers is going to taste like, but that actually turned out, it's pretty tasty. And again, this stuff would have lasted. I mean, a good dry crisp bread like this, that would have lasted months and months and months. And from what I gather, cheese within its waxed exterior, as long as you eat it after you've broken the seal relatively quickly, you got something that does travel quite well. You know, like that waxy stuff definitely would have kept it well preserved. Another grog. All right. I've decided I'm going to have another go at the pemmican. The reason why, first of all, the dried fruit and the dessert, they'll be kind of the wrapping up of the meal. But the pemmican, now, when I was looking up how to make this stuff, a fella that gave a recipe, and I'll be putting links once I do that video, the fellow who gave the recipe of how to make this stuff actually said that this was called the Iron Ration, which I've mentioned before. And my dungeon master and I had a discussion about Iron Rations in general. There was a town I was approaching, I think, and unfortunately I had invested all my cash in my weapons and my armor. So I didn't actually have that much money to enter the town and stay the night somewhere. And I can't remember how much I had left, maybe 5 silver pieces on me. And when push came to shove, and I just said, well, no worries, I've got my Iron Rations on me, I'll just have that for the evening. My DM was like, no, 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 you wouldn't eat this stuff voluntarily. If you had the option of real food, there's no way you would eat Iron Rations. I gotta say, the parched wheat, the cheese, and the crackers, I would totally eat that, so he's wrong. The pemmican, though, he might have a point. And the fellow who was showing how to make this stuff, he kind of mentioned that as well. It's not the greatest tasting food ever, and this may have been what our Iron Rations were originally named after, so yeah, maybe there's some validity to it. Okay, we've broken up a piece of pemmican. Let's give this another try. I have a feeling both my dungeon master and the guy who gave me this recipe, they may have been right. If pemmican is Iron Rations, it's not terribly tasty, but you might have to survive on it. Let's give it another whirl here. Another bite. Man, that is really, that's a hard sell. Okay, I gotta nail this flavor down. Yes, it tastes of meat, but it's like somebody took beef, like a really nice steak, for example, cooked the ever-living heck out of it, broke up the really, really well-done steak, and mixed it with twigs, and then turned that into a patty. It's got that kind of flavor. Like it's really rough going down the throat. Hence the grog. Yeah, it's really rough going down the throat. And the meat flavor is like almost not even there. You're aware of it. Man, that might actually be, that might be what my dungeon master was thinking of. But then he was the one who mentioned the salted fish, so not sure. Anyway, let's get us some dessert. Now, we'll start off with some dried fruit. I'll just set it out there. Yeah, nice good piece of dried mango. This stuff will travel well. It was either going to be that or bananas, and I just thought, I don't know, bananas in medieval fantasy? But that makes as much sense as mangoes. Definitely very tasty, though. I like it. Now, before I have my dessert, let's just have another little piece of the grog. Ah, yes. Now, what is my dessert? This, probably of no big surprise to anybody, a good old lump of chocolate. Now, you'd think, okay, that's you're just doing that to treat yourself, aren't you? Apparently, chocolate was in history, was a very well-known item to carry in your pack to give yourself a quick boost of energy. I guess, and because it traveled really well, I suppose. Let's have a bite of chocolate. This is dark chocolate. There we go. Tasty. Yes, as I say, I'm not doing that to give myself a little treat. If anything, that's what the grog is for. The chocolate has actually been part of soldier packs since, I think, World War I. It's also been known to be used in a lot of stories for adventurers who grab it out of their pack. They'll have, a slice of ham and a slice of chocolate. I wonder if that's where the continental breakfast idea of having buns and chocolate and meat in Europe comes from. I don't know. Largely speculation there, but yeah. Chocolate, there was a few discussions in the research that I did talking about what would have been in these old packs of food, and a lot of people mentioned chocolate. In fact, somebody referenced there were a variety of stories of soldiers in World War I and adventurers in the early part of the 20th century who, for example, the 39 Steps, which involves the adventures of Richard Hannay. Apparently, almost any time he reaches into his pack for a snack as part of a scene, he's chowing down on chocolate. So this is by no means for my own personal enjoyment. This is the real McCoy that would have been used in a lot of travel packs and certainly would be in your Iron Rations. Well, I gotta say, this has been an interesting experiment. Definitely the parched wheat. I really, really enjoyed that. That is not something I thought I was going to enjoy, but it has turned out to be really worthwhile. The pemmican, I don't know about that stuff. That is something of an acquired taste, but it has a great deal of historical significance, especially here in Canada. When I do the video where I actually show you making this stuff, pemmican is really important in a major part of Canadian history, as well as just how a lot of soldiers managed to survive for out in their travels. So definitely a worthwhile chapter just on pemmican alone. But of all the things that I've had, the one that is the biggest surprise and the most pleasant, definitely the parched wheat. I didn't really think that would be that nice. Now, this video is very, very long, so my apologies, but cheers. I'll have my final drink of grog. There we go. And until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.